tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The message is, get vaccinated. The second message is, get vaccinated.
BC's Premier has COVID-19. John Horgan says his symptoms are mild. Also,
the whole country and the province has to come to help.
Abbotsford considers big, expensive changes to how it handles flooding. What it could take as the world receives another dire warning about climate change.
Driving in the middle of a snowstorm, and that's when I got to hear that I won a Grammy.
And a BC musician wins big at the Grammys.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is away tonight. We begin with big news out of BC's capital. BC Premier John Horgan has tested positive for COVID-19. Our provincial affairs reporter Mira Bain says more on the diagnosis for a man who's already endured cancer treatment.
Premier John Horgan confirmed the diagnosis himself on Twitter. He received the positive test result this morning. The Premier describes his symptoms as mild, and he adds he's fully vaccinated. He says he's isolating and working from home until his symptoms resolve. The 62-year-old recently had treatment for throat cancer after being diagnosed in the fall. He underwent 35 radiation sessions and lost about 25 pounds. Health Minister Adrian Dix says he spoke with him today.
As usual, the Premier was engaged. I spoke to him probably for 45 minutes this morning, and he was at his post in that sense, working and fully engaged in that discussion.
The Premier has been at a lot of events before his diagnosis, including the Globe Conference, where he met with the Prime Minister, and announcements in the legislature last week. Masks haven't been mandatory indoors since March 11th. The Premier's diagnosis comes as there are growing concerns over a sixth wave of COVID-19. Tomorrow, the Health Minister is holding a COVID briefing.
The continued discussion of issues of provincial health orders and the announcements that were made now about a month ago. Thirdly, I think you'll see some discussion of vaccination, and particularly fourth doses.
It's unclear where the Premier contracted the virus and when he'll be back in the legislature chamber. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
COVID hospitalizations in BC, meanwhile, have again risen past 300 over the weekend. 321 people are in hospital right now, 47 more than before. And at least one more person has been admitted to critical care. The province is not releasing any updates on BC's death toll until Thursday. We are expecting an update about possible fourth doses in tomorrow's COVID-19 briefing. That's at 1 p.m. Back to politics now. A longtime Liberal MLA is resigning her seat at the end of this month to take on a new role with the federal government. Stephanie Cadieux has represented voters in 3 Surrey ridings for 13 years. She is the first woman with a disability to serve in the legislature and in cabinet, where she was Minister for Children and Family Development and Labour, among other portfolios. Today she announced she's been appointed Canada's first Chief Accessibility Officer.
The federal government passed the Accessible Canada Act. The act lays out a couple of roles, this being one of them. And the purpose of the role is to oversee and keep tabs on how well the government is doing in reaching the objectives of the act.
BC Liberal leader Kevin Falcon says Cadieux will be missed at the legislature. He thanked her for her service and wished her well in the new post. Cadieux recently served as opposition critic for ICBC. The unlicensed daycare operator in East Vancouver, where a toddler known as Baby Mac died 5 years ago, has now pleaded guilty to 1 criminal charge. The Crown says Susie Yasmin Saad pleaded guilty to failing to provide necessaries of life to 9 children. That includes the toddler known as Baby Mac, Macallan Saney. He was 16 months old when he died at the Olive Branch Family Daycare in January 2017. Police found Saad caring for 5 children under the age of 18 months. By law, unlicensed childcare providers can care for up to 2 children at a maximum other than their own. The impact of November's devastating floods continue to sweep through Abbotsford. Following that once-in-a-century disaster, the city is busy planning how to mitigate the risk of future floods. And as Joel Ballard reports, it has come up with several options, and they come with massive price tags.
Record rainfall swamped much of the city of Abbotsford. Farmlands, homes, livelihoods destroyed. For those who live here, future threats feel ever present.
November is coming sooner than we realize.
Monday, the city was presented with 4 options on how to avoid a repeat of last November, with each option ranging from just over $200 million to more than $2.7 billion. But the risk of not taking action?
That we will have something equivalent or much worse. That is a short answer. The status quo is not something I want to push.
The cheapest of the options would see the city stick with the status quo, along with enhancements to the current Barrowtown pump station, which is designed to keep the Sumas Prairie dry, land that was once a lake. The second option would include everything from the first plan, as well as a new Sumas River pump station. Option 3 builds on the last 2, while also including a new floodway and storage area. And finally, option 4 follows a similar path, except for a few changes like a narrow floodway. Looking forward, the question becomes, who bears the cost?
We as a city do not have that kind of funding. This is where the whole country and the province has to come to help.
For its part, the province is prepared to help, but says it's too early to talk about exact numbers.
What's critical, of course, is ensuring that the work is done thoroughly and the work is done right. And I know that that is what Abbotsford wants to do, and I look forward to Abbotsford completing that work.
Late last year, the federal government pledged $5 billion for flood disaster recovery efforts. Still, some are calling for more.
Can the government let us know whether there's going to be additional funds on top of the $5 billion for dike infrastructure, for road repair, for First Nations emergency management and supplies?
In response, Ottawa said it has been helping from the start, but stopped short of pledging further funds.
The work is ongoing with municipalities, with the people impacted by the floods, and with the province and Indigenous communities in order to make sure the federal government will be there for the people of British Columbia.
Back in Abbotsford, Council didn't vote today. First, there will be public consultation.
It won't be years. At least I'll be pulling my hair out if it is. We're talking months. We need to move.
But Braun says things will move swiftly. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Now, that call to action comes as the world gets another dire warning around climate change. A new UN climate report says it is now or never for governments to reassess their energy policies. As Stephen D'Souza shows us, a Burnaby firm is working with Ottawa to meet its climate goals, but that path is far from simple.
At this manufacturing plant in Burnaby, workers hope the technology they're developing could help Canada reach its climate goals.
Over the next decade, we want to be one of the companies that enables up to 1 billion tons annually of CO2 captured or removed.
His company creates carbon capture and storage systems. Instead of carbon spewing out of a smokestack, it's sent through pipes into a system where filters absorb the CO2. But right now, they're only capturing carbon in the thousands of tons, and none of it is being stored. Large-scale removal is still years away. In its latest report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warned efforts to curb emissions must be accelerated. Dependence on fossil fuels must be massively reduced, that the next few years are critical. Otherwise, the world will blow past the target, keeping warming at just 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the global climate could warm by 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. An outcome scientists warn will result in catastrophic changes to the planet.
Unless there are immediate and deep emission reductions across all sectors, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees will be beyond reach.
The report warns, to reach climate goals, governments will have to leave valuable oil and gas projects in the ground. A difficult challenge, the Environment Minister admits.
I think our work as a government and as a responsible government is to ensure that the transition happens as smoothly as possible.
One tool, a long-awaited tax credit for carbon capture programs, expected in this week's budget, something Stevenson says is necessary.
It's a critical part of decarbonizing the energy system and the industrial emissions in time to meet our climate goals.
But critics say those systems only prolong dependence on fossil fuels.
It's clear that these are dangerous distractions, and betting on them is essentially gambling with our lives.
So while the consensus of scientists on what needs to be done is clear, the path there is still far from simple. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with our first look at the forecast. Before we get to that picture, Joe, and yet another stark warning that you've talked about many times.
Yes, that's right. Reviewing not quite the full 3,000 pages today. That's how many pages were released on this latest report, but looking forward to deep diving on what I found surprising a little bit later on in the show, and hopeful as well. Let me start you off with what was a very, dare I say, fall-like storm that hit the South Coast, a fall storm masquerading as a spring storm, keeping temperatures a little on the cool side, bringing the heavy rain last night and strong winds to the island. Let me start you off with the current temperatures right now. We've been below seasonal for the past few days, 7 right now at YVR. Seasonals for this time of the year, based on the past few decades anyway, around 13 degrees. So we're struggling to hit that, and that's the case right across the South Coast. So we are seeing snow levels drop, and we do have warnings in place, which I'll show you in just a moment. The satellite and radar bringing the snow into higher elevations, bringing the rain in sort of squally lines. So we're not quite done with it here in Metro Vancouver. You can see some showers down around YVR and then out towards east of Abbotsford. Lightning strikes also dotting the skies. Saanich on the island actually seen some small hail with those lightning strikes earlier today. So this is all thanks to, again, that fall storm. It is very reminiscent of a fall low pressure. We're getting behind the cold front now, so we still have to deal with some very strong westerly winds tonight, particularly for the island. I've got those warnings on in yellow for Victoria. That's 90 kilometer per hour gusts. We still have the heavy snow falling for the mountain passes, Hope to Merritt. And I've actually put the marine winds on for the strait, so watching those ferry crossings early tomorrow morning. Dan, by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon, back to the double digits, still cool. We still should see some sunshine, and hoping to bring you a lot more in the long range forecast.
Okay, we will wait for that. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
An elderly man's visit to New York City has ended with him bloodied and bruised. Someone attacked him while he was out for a walk. Now, his family in BC are hoping authorities will find that suspect. A warning, some of this story contains distressing images. As Benit Breach reports, the NYPD's hate crime team is now involved.
Traveling to New York was a dream come true for Nirmal Singh, but it ended in violence and blood. Someone attacked the 70-year-old while he was on a morning walk by the Gurdwara. I was walking slowly. A man came and punched me in the nose. The bone in my nose has cracked. I have wounds on my eyes and my head is hurting. The assault caused Singh to fall down. He says his attacker didn't ask for anything. I bled a lot and my turban came off. Singh's family in Abbotsford are heartbroken.
We are feeling very sad. Yesterday we are tense, my family, my mother, my sister, we are always tense.
Whatever happened was terrible. Singh lives in India and got a visa to travel to the US and Canada. At first, his family tried to discourage him from going to New York because they don't have relatives there. But Singh was keen to fulfill his dream of visiting America and insisted on staying at this Gurdwara in Queens. His son says his father was too afraid to report the assault, fearing authorities would cancel his visa.
The New York Police Department says this was an unprovoked attack and is going to be a possible hate crime. They say Singh was assaulted by an unidentified male in his 30s, yet there's been no suspects or arrests.
Manjeet Kalle says seeing his father suffer has been unbearable. Whatever happened, we should get justice. Why did it happen?
Every time, why are some people attack on my community? We are Sikh, we are help to everyone.
It's not just my community. This should not happen to any community. Kalle says his father does not have travel insurance, so he hopes the U.S. government can help pay for his medical bills. Members of the New York Gurdwara are stepping up as well.
We want to make sure that before anything else, he gets the proper medical attention he needs, and then also other necessities like clothes and just food and stuff of that nature. From senior leadership all the way down to the youth, everybody's standing shoulder to shoulder with Uncle right now.
Singh admits he feels fear in his heart. I'm scared that this will happen again and I will be hit again. His family hopes to be with him soon to help heal his physical and emotional scars. Beneat Brach, CBC News, Abbotsford.
After 2 years of COVID cancellations, lovebirds are back looking to tie the knot. But dream weddings are still a bit hard to come by. We'll tell you why after the break. Thank you for joining us during our commercial-free live stream. Let's take a look at what we're on offer tonight.
You can't be a shy person to drive this thing. Everybody seems to gravitate to it. Hi, I'm Gordon McKenzie. I own Flounder. Well, Flounder kind of owns me. We're friends, been friends for about 15 years now. What you're looking at behind me is my friend's creation. It's an all-aircraft aluminum, including the frame, 23-foot floating RV. It started out life as a 71 Chevy pickup truck, and Stanley took it home, decided to put an aluminum frame together, and built the rest of it around it. He, unfortunately, only drove it 20 miles before he parked it and left it for approximately 20 more years. Then I inherited it, and 4 years later, I discovered it was actually a boat. The body was curved to hold the water, similar to the boat hull. He's put at least 5,000 rivets into it, probably 50 sheets of high-grade 6061 aircraft aluminum. I took it to Ghost Lake and I backed it in 2017, and the front end was a little heavy, so I took exercise balls and put them in the front compartments that Stanley used to accommodate the pontoons, and the second time I went out it floated beautifully. I believe it was designed to put 2 outboard motors, one on each side of the back, and then you just rev one or the other to steer it. It's got a 240 horsepower Chevy 6-cylinder engine in it. It goes pretty quick on the highway. It cuts through the wind like a dart, and the semi-trucks pull me like I'm a motorcycle. I don't have to touch my gas pedal at all. I just float along and enjoy life. Flounder is the most fun vehicle I've ever owned. Now, I'd like to keep her going, but if somebody has better resources or abilities and Flounder likes them, then I'd be willing to part with her, but I don't think I would let her go cheaply.
The table is set, if you will, for a busy wedding season here in BC. After several years of pandemic delays, it's led to a surge in demand for venues and services. But as Janella Hamilton reports, some businesses who've been desperate for work are now having to turn customers away.
When Liz Locke heard that most COVID-19 restrictions were lifting for large events, she and her partner were ecstatic.
We have had 3 iterations of our wedding plans
based on some changes and challenges with the pandemic.
Locke says she's hoping third time is the charm and her wedding can go ahead as planned this July. But now she's facing a whole new set of challenges.
Our preferred venue has had a lot of restrictions during the pandemic, and they aren't able to give us a date to confirm until June. And a lot of caterers and a lot of restaurants right now say it depends. It depends. We don't know. We don't have staff to do something that big right now, but we might in the summer.
As a backup plan, Locke will use the rooftop patio at her apartment building to host a smaller ceremony. But finding available entertainment has also been tricky.
Since just before March break, it's been like, nope, 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 sorry, we're booked, we're full.
It's led to a wave of demand for small businesses in the industry.
Everybody who even had the tiny events planned that were, a week out, 2 weeks out, to being like, okay, change of plans, I'd like to actually quadruple the amount of people I'd like to have.
And that means staff in the kitchen are busier than ever.
We definitely turned down a decent amount of the inquiries coming in just because I don't want to overwork the team.
The owner of this florist shop says she too has had an increase in orders.
I'm excited to be able to just jump into these events and wedding season. It means that we'll be able to hire more people to come and work for us.
Over at South Hall Event Center, the phone has also been ringing off the hook.
People are looking to do events within a month, within a couple of weeks, some even during the week.
The venue is now booking weddings into 2024.
A lot of people use these events as a way to reconnect with people.
Something Locke is looking forward to.
I'm very grateful and optimistic that we will actually get to look out and see people's faces, and after the wedding we'll be able to hug them and cheers them in real life, and that's going to be, I think, an incredible moment.
And she's crossing her fingers that rules won't change again before then. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
It's believed to be the first of its kind in Canada, a new housing development allowing people who live with autism and other developmental disabilities to be together on their own. I'm going to take you inside after this.
Thousands of cherry trees in Vancouver have started to flower, and as Bob Nixon reports, their pretty petals are proving inspirational.
Snow may still cover much of Canada, but in Vancouver, the cherry trees have begun to blossom. And no one is happier than the city's Pink Lady. 2 years ago, Linda Poole borrowed an idea from Japan and founded the Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival. After all, the city has 36,000 cherry trees, and when they blossom each spring, well, just listen.
They inspire gardeners, they inspire poets and artists and musicians with new composition.
You like your cherry blossom.
I love them, but I'm not alone.
She's right about that. Here's Jessica Tremblay from Burnaby, one of thousands of poets from 36 countries who entered the Cherry Blossom Festival's haiku contest. Haiku, that three-line poetry style also borrowed from Japan.
I think the best haiku reflects those moments that, the here, the now, moments that will not last. And same thing for cherry blossoms.
Tremblay's entry was one of the winners.
Late for work, cherry petals in my hair.
For those 8 words, Tremblay's haiku and the other winners will be displayed on the inside of buses throughout the Vancouver area. Not exactly immortality, but apparently that's also one of the lessons of cherry blossoms.
Because of its ephemeral nature, it's to teach us to celebrate life now because it's also fleeting.
But maybe with a little luck, life can also be as beautiful. Bob Nixon, CBC News, Vancouver.
Every spring they create a cascade of pink blossoms, but once they've fallen, it's all too easy to see what afflicts most of Vancouver's Japanese cherry trees.
A tree like this, for instance, you can see some obvious problems with bacteria and some galls and swellings up here, some dying branches. It's got some insect damage here on the lower leaves and a little bit of brown rot.
Vancouver's first Japanese cherry trees were a gift from Yokohama, Japan 50 years ago. They became the rage in Vancouver until city officials discovered they are prone to disease and infestations in a wet climate. And so a mixture of hardier but plainer flowering trees like the pear and the liquid amber has become the solution. Every year they are planted in place of a couple of hundred dead or dying Japanese cherry trees.
It's disappointing because the trees are very beautiful, but they are quite diseased, and measures that have been taken, like banding, only are Band-Aid controls.
What I would like best was a really nice tree. I love the flowers, but sometimes you can't have everything.
But the city has already decided its money is better spent on ensuring the survival of the Japanese cherry trees' plainer sisters. Carol Forbes, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight for you on CBC Vancouver News. Premier John Horgan has COVID-19. He announced his diagnosis on Twitter this morning. The Premier says, fortunately, his symptoms are mild thanks to being fully vaccinated, and he's working from home right now. He recently underwent treatment for throat cancer and would be considered immunocompromised.
November is coming sooner than we realize. I'm also concerned about freshet on the Fraser. That dike needs work, or we're going to have a much bigger disaster.
After it was devastated by massive flooding last fall, the city of Abbotsford is looking at some new, very expensive ways to mitigate future risks. But it says it can't pay for the work on its own, and it wants Ottawa to help for what could be billions of dollars. The call comes as the world's top climate scientists share more dire warnings about climate change.
People in general also starting to get to feel like themselves again.
The BC musician can add another trophy to his growing mantle. Alex Cuba won his first Grammy Award last night for Best Latin Pop Album. The Smithers-based musician says he found it while driving home in a snowstorm. Cuba recorded the album Mendo in his living room during this pandemic. Saturday marked World Autism Awareness Day. Here in Vancouver, a new type of housing development is bringing people with autism together as a community. It's an inclusive rental program that includes supports and subsidies. As Benit Breit shows us, advocates are encouraging developers to consider housing projects just like it.
For Taryn Batchelor, this is home sweet home. Her favorite things about the space?
This rooftop, my friends, and the community. The view is right here. Look at that.
This building is a purpose-built rental. Since November, it's seen 16 apartments rented out to tenants like Taryn, who have autism or other developmental disabilities. For Batchelor, the space is a haven for friendship.
Like all my friends. It's nice to have them in the building.
And independence.
I like living here hanging out with friends and stuff. Not being at home anymore. I have my own space.
Tenants in the program receive subsidies to help with housing costs, and those who need additional support have a roommate or caregiver living with them. Volunteers, parents, and special needs advocates like John McCulloch have worked for years with developers to make this happen.
Well, this is the first time, as far as we're aware, that we've been able to move, in this case, 16 young adults with autism into a community, a regular, typical community in Vancouver. It's anyone with a developmental disability who's living on income assistance. That's the community that we're trying to work with.
For him, the hope is to foster more affordable and inclusive housing projects like this.
And there's an almost infinite requirement for this. We have a long wait list of people who would like to do this sort of, to move into this kind of building.
The housing is a comfort for tenants like Taryn, but also for parents.
I could cry when I hear, she's doing this, she's going there. I'm like, oh, hold it, wait, you don't know how to do that. Oh, I've got friends, they'll help me. It's just, it makes me want to cry because we're so fortunate.
We've been concerned for a long time that when myself and Bernie are gone, what's going to happen with Taryn? We have an answer to that solution. There's an answer to that now, and it's here.
And here, the day can mean cozying up on the couch, steaming up some tea to catch up with friends, or simply soaking up the sunshine on the patio. A new beginning for a forever home. Benit Breit, CBC News, Vancouver.
Condemnation is deepening over the dead civilians found this weekend in Ukraine. With investigations into what happened now underway, world leaders are promising a global response. From Lviv, Ukraine, the CBC's Katie Simpson has this report And a warning for you, it includes images some of you may find disturbing.
The work to uncover the full scope of the assault on Busha remains brutal, made even more painful by the fact the work is just beginning. Ukrainian soldiers look for unexploded mines, hazards, and of course, more bodies. They were joined today by their visibly distraught president. These are war crimes, Volodymyr Zelensky says, and they will be recognized by the world as genocide. The world is just starting to get a better look at the violence in the south. Soldiers find bodies in the streets of Mariupol. The mayor says some 140,000 people are still trapped here. Survivors dig graves for the dead. The sound of shelling echoes nearby. We've been burying bodies for the second day in a row, he says. There are lots of children in the yard. We decided to remove bodies so they won't decay, to do the right thing. Air raid sirens are so common in the western part of the country, people barely react anymore. Local leaders are ramping up their protections in the city of Lviv, opening a new support center for soldiers who serve this part of the country. They're asking for donations, money, helmets, and body armor. I'm wondering if I can get your reaction to the stories and the images that we're seeing coming out of Kyiv and the cities around it. The member of parliament for Lviv says he's never seen such harrowing images of violence. Through an interpreter, he says he is confident Ukraine will not be defeated.
We are going to pay revenge for every life lost in this area, and every Russian boot is going to leave this country being killed in action.
Lviv is a relatively safe place, but because Russia is so unpredictable, there are fears it could be targeted if the military changes its tactics. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Lviv.
A new bus route is promising to bring the Fraser Valley and Metro Vancouver a little closer together. BC Transit's so-called Route 66 launched over the weekend. We're going to jump on board right after this. And at 6:31, a live look at the Inner Harbour in Victoria. Gray day in the South Coast. Windy, too. Johanna will paint us a BC-wide forecast right after this.
It's definitely important for me to connect with kids back home.
How are you? Good. Good. Are you playing or watching this weekend? Yeah, just playing. Yeah, you've been a good little sis?
It's impactful. I've had my signatures and my photos with gold medals. I have a photo and a signed signature from Dana and Tal after 2002. So, you know, all of us have moments like that. Carla McLeod, Colleen's Historics, all those players I got to meet and had an impact on me. So you want to do that for someone else, and maybe 15, 20 years down the line, someone I met here is sharing a similar story, and that's what it's all about.
It's an exciting time to see some Olympians. I'm just really excited to see them because they're Olympians and they're like really good hockey players.
So we take a huge amount of pride being role models and inspiration for the young players, and to be able to be back in my home province with kids that are here playing for the U16 Team Saskatchewan weekend, and 10 years ago I was them, so I think it's super important to share this with as many people as possible, and just try to inspire as many kids as we can along the way.
Well, I just really hope to make it to the Olympics like they did, so yeah.
I love this game and I love being able to represent Canada, so I'll just get back to work this summer and keep trying to make World Championship teams and keep working hard to try to be on the 2026 roster.
Well, we're training with 33 Field Ambulance, a unit based in Halifax. We come over once a year and we train here at the Armories in conjunction with the Prince Edward Island Regiment. And we run battle simulation with casualty management and evacuation, run right through from the initial point of injury right through to the treatment facility that's located outside the Armories. It's a very good simulation for what we're able to do. It creates the conditions for that fog of war and that chaos, so our medics need to build on the training they received yesterday at Holland College, some of the skills that we did in those skill stations. And so we do that trauma training in a well-led, calm environment. They can sharpen their skills, and then we come here and then they have to apply those skills in this environment, which you'll see is quite loud and distracting and has a lot of the components that you'll find in a real situation.
So we're doing skills that are involved in maintenance of clinical readiness for our troops. So the skills are a blend of military and medical skills that are most comparable to paramedics. So a lot of paramedic skills with a military trauma flair.
Stable? Okay, so we have the pelvic finder here.
We maintain consistently, our people maintain their training, their qualifications, and keep their skills sharp. So when we are called upon to deploy, regardless of where or when, we're ready.
A new bus route is finally connecting Chilliwack with the rest of Metro Vancouver. The expanded Fraser Valley Express, also known as Route 66, started rolling on Sunday, taking passengers from Burnaby to downtown Chilliwack. Our Margaret Gallagher got a ticket to ride.
Hi, I'm Margaret Gallagher from CBC, and I'm about to board the Fraser Valley Express Route 66, the newly expanded route that takes me all the way from downtown Chilliwack to Lougheed Station in Burnaby. Okay, I've got my mask and the crisp 5 that I need to get on the bus. This expanded route is a big deal because it makes it way easier to get from Chilliwack to Metro Vancouver. And there's lots of people here who visit their families and are really excited for the change.
It's an easier way for me to get from Vancouver to Chilliwack cheaper. It's like a Greyhound bus, but better.
As a Chilliwack teen in the 80s, the Greyhound was my only option to bus into Vancouver. It felt like it took forever, and it was expensive. All right, I made it to Lougheed Station on the Fraser Valley Express, Route 66. It took about an hour and a half from downtown Chilliwack, and now I'm going to catch the SkyTrain. This was a lot faster than the Greyhound I used to take.
Margaret Gallagher reporting on Route 66. Vancouver police, meanwhile, arrested 4 protesters today for blocking rush hour traffic on the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge. This was the holdup earlier this morning for drivers from the North Shore headed to Vancouver and the other way. VPD says protesters were taken to jail and will be given court dates if they're approved for release. Police say they also towed 3 vehicles placed in the bridge to help block traffic. Earlier today, the climate activist group Save Old Growth announced it will resume road blockades across BC. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with a full look at the forecast. Joe, before we get to that, let's go back to the latest warning from climate scientists around climate change. Again, another warning, very dire. What more can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, Dan, as we heard from Stephen D'Souza's piece earlier in the show, it was a dire but instructive climate report, really the last in the series. But I wanted to talk to you about some of the slivers of hope that I found from the 3,000 pages. This report took over 8 years. 100,000 studies were used to make these conclusions. And they weren't just climate change studies, they were social studies drawing on the latest research in human behavior, history, economics to try and understand and provide solutions for our transition away from fossil fuels. Because no matter which way you slice it, every solution, and this report did offer dozens of different pathways that the world can take to reach or keep warming below 1.5, they all require a rapid transition away from fossil fuels. But sticking with those slivers of hope, this is the first time that authors really included a look and a deep dive into human behavior and mass shifts in human behavior, everything from moving away from food waste, moving towards more sustainable diets. Adding up all of these shifts in human behaviors can add up to a 40 to 70% drop in greenhouse gas emissions by middle of the century. The report also looked at what climate policies are working, and they are working. We're just not seeing them happen fast enough. But one more sliver of hope. This is the final report before the 195 countries that had to agree on this wording will actually meet in Egypt. And so hopefully this will be the report, the backbone for those final pledges in just 8 months. Okay, let me take you from climate to weather, obviously very connected, but in this case, look at the current temperatures across the country. Not much in the way of spring weather. 11 and 3 Regina right now. We've been dealing with our fall storm on the west coast and taking you through the overnight 3, 4, 5 a.m. lingering showers right through to your Tuesday morning. And notice the snow east of Chilliwack. We're going to see that continue to accumulate through the morning hours. Tomorrow afternoon, I do think we'll see some good sunny breaks. And look at that, by the evening hours, high pressure moves in full force. So there's that low that crosses over to the interior. We'll see fresh snow for the Rockies. That high pressure will be our story for a couple of days. So get through the morning showers tomorrow. Temperatures heat up a little bit for Wednesday. Look at that. Haven't seen a 17 and sunny. Yes, I hear your excitement, Dan, for Thursday. And then we get back to what has very much been our weather so far this March for the second half of the week. April.
It's consistent.
It is, at least we can say that.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
It's advertised as a safe and reliable way to send money. But an Ontario couple says the $10,000 wire transfer they sent to their son in Alberta was put in the wrong account. Then it vanished. They turned to the CBC's Go Public. And as Rosa Marcatelli found out, Canada's wire transfer system may be more prone to errors than those in other countries.
Put it up front there.
This is the mountain of paperwork from Barbara and Robert Behan's 2-month battle with the banks. The couple wanted to help their adult son in Calgary, sending him a $10,000 wire transfer at Christmas from their TD bank account to his CIBC one. CIBC deposited the money into a stranger's account. That stranger withdrew it all, then closed the account.
It's been many sleepless nights. It's $10,000. It's not $1.50. It's hard-earned money.
The couple says the banks blamed each other, and CIBC blamed them, saying the wrong information was provided on the wire transfer form. If that's the case, the Behans say, the wire transfer should have been flagged.
It never should have reached the point that it did.
A banking expert says Canada's wire transfer system, called Lynx, is the problem. It was introduced less than a year ago to modernize the system. The expert says it's prone to problems.
A simple mistake can get compounded very quickly.
He says Canada should have adopted the International Bank Account Number, or IBAN system, used in many other countries. Its built-in error detection automatically flags and rejects wire transfers with problems.
And that means if there's any error in, like, a number transposed or a digit missing, it would not work.
After the Behans complained, CIBC's ombudsman found the bank was not at fault, but offered the couple half of their money back as a goodwill gesture. The bank returned the entire amount after Go Public contacted it, saying it recognized the unique circumstances of the situation. TD says it made no mistakes.
The thing that we're saying is, how did it happen? Why did it happen? And how are you going to correct it in the future so it doesn't happen to anybody else? And we cannot get an answer from TD Bank or the CIBC.
Go Public asked Payments Canada, the organization in charge of the country's wire transfer system, about problems with Lynx. It didn't answer the questions. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
CBC News has learned the federal government will announce a plan to provide $20 a month high-speed internet to low-income families and seniors. As Travis Danraj explains, the plan is to see every Canadian with online access by 2030.
Yes. The Quibel home has been a busy place since the start of the pandemic. Work, school, socializing, all from home, all virtual at one point or another. The cost to log on, significant.
Currently, my internet is sitting at $90 a month. This new program will actually be much cheaper for us, so I'm really happy about that.
That new government program promises to provide affordable high-speed internet to hundreds of thousands of families at the highest level of income support, like the Quibels.
This is essential because we want them to be fully part of the new digital society that we have.
It is the latest part of a plan to get 98% of Canadians high-speed access by 2026. But only those receiving the maximum Canada Child Benefit or Guaranteed Income Supplement can qualify. Data for those that do is also capped.
200 gigabyte data limit is completely unacceptable, although it's great to see connectivity barriers being broken down in some regards. It does introduce further constraints to those on the wrong side of the digital divide.
14 internet service providers are participating in the program, from the big guys like Bell and Rogers to smaller companies.
What we're trying to do is bring accessible internet, make internet more accessible to Canadians that need it most.
Still, some ISPs like TechSavvy say they can't participate because they buy wholesale bandwidth from other providers, and that the government should, quote, lower internet prices for all Canadians simply by enforcing the CRTC's 2019 decision on wholesale rates, which would lower internet prices across the country. While the program is not without its critics, families that will benefit soon, like the Quibels, say the extra money saved will make a major difference.
More stuff for school, more clothes for activities outside of school, more just in general have things for them that before we had to cut back on because our internet bill is so big.
Eligible homes will receive letters from the government letting them know they qualify in the coming months. Travis Damrash, CBC News, Ottawa.
He is one of Twitter's fiercest critics, but tech billionaire Elon Musk is now its largest shareholder after snapping up $3 billion in stock. And all this just days after the world's richest man mused on Twitter about starting his own social media platform. Here's Nisha Patel.
Elon Musk is taking an old saying to a new level. Put your money where your mouth is, spending nearly $3 billion to buy up 9% of Twitter. In this clip from a past interview, Musk shared what he liked about the platform.
I kind of need some means of getting a message out.
Social media platforms are a key source of news, information, and entertainment. And so that's sort of the new sandbox where entrepreneurs want to play.
Founder and CEO of electric car giant Tesla and aerospace firm SpaceX, Musk is one of Twitter's most high-profile users.
Ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk!
He's got more than 80 million followers.
I think if I just posted that on Twitter, I'd be fine.
But he's also one of its most controversial users, from using it to pump questionable cryptocurrencies to a tweet about taking Tesla private at a fixed share price. That eventually saw him step down as chair of the company.
So why would Elon Musk do this?
Look, I mean, this has really been building from Musk. This is the first step toward him driving significant change at Twitter.
Just 2 weeks ago, Musk polled his followers asking, "Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? Please vote carefully."
Maybe the end game is acquiring the company outright. It would be a much easier endeavor to take than kind of starting something up from scratch.
So, some experts say Musk could change the tone of Twitter.
Enable not just what we consider free speech to circulate, but like a lot of problematic forms of content.
He goes down a direction, usually goes aggressively, dives into the deep end of the pool. That's the view of what he's going to do with Twitter.
Musk hasn't said anything publicly about his intentions, but he is known for making big moves. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario launched a regulated market for online casinos and esports betting sites today. It's the first province in this country to legalize and tax those platforms. But as Philippe de Montigny explains, some insiders and experts are a bit worried.
Ontario is hoping it's going to be a huge new revenue source, regulating and taxing the $1 billion online gambling industry. This Toronto startup offers virtual casino games and sports betting, one of the few homegrown operators now licensed and allowed to advertise legally.
We have a bit of a home court advantage, we feel, so it being that market is obviously critical for us.
Big global gambling sites like Bet365 and FanDuel are also joining the party, with hundreds of online games now certified by the provincial regulator. Now that they're legit, there's concern some Ontarians may not play within their limits.
Most people have a really bad understanding of random chance, and so they think, for example, if they keep playing, they're due to win.
Researchers say all the flashy ads and easy access may draw at-risk players.
With the increase in accessibility of gambling games in this way, there should also be an increase in accessibility of responsible gambling tools and services to these players.
Beyond passive measures like including links to addiction resources on their sites, FanDuel Canada says it's being proactive.
On our app, there are a lot of tools for players to be able to self-regulate around game bets, length of time, wager limits.
Licensed online operators are being taxed by Ontario 20% of their earnings, far less than brick-and-mortar casinos at 55%.
It's not fair. We want to compete. We want iGaming. We want it to be a level playing field.
Legalizing online betting in Ontario could draw some customers away from casinos. An industry report says that could result in hundreds of millions of dollars in lost tax revenue each year for Queen's Park. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
A BC musician scored big on music's biggest night last night. After the break, Latin pop artist Alex Cuba on where he was when he learned he'd won a Grammy. Stick around.
Number you have reached is not in service.
Nearby businesses say this payphone in Okotoks hasn't worked in years, but Beth Cruz has a view from the window of Better Than Home Coin Laundry, and she says every now and then someone gives it a go.
The younger kids pick it up and see if it works, and then laughing at how big and bulky and how out of date it looks on the building.
TELUS is removing the town's last two payphones on April 25th. The company says part of the problem is these relics often break. There's few parts to repair them, let alone experts around to find a fix. Combined, the two phones were used for 10 calls in the last year.
I carry my payphone in my pocket now, right?
Okotoks Mayor Tanya Thorne says these old machines bring back memories.
I'd have a dime in my shoe or in my coat pocket or whatever, because that was how I checked in or phoned to get a ride.
She says if there's a place to commemorate the payphone, that's something the town could get behind. Helen Pike, CBC News, Okotoks.
We go down. This is basically like an introduction to stage combat for young folks, mostly for folks in high school, and it's a way to just kind of learn what the basics are. It's just a way to explore what stage combat is in a really gentle way, learning like brief hand-to-hand, learning how to fall. That's kind of what I specialize in, is falling and rolling and tumbling. So really kind of the broader, it's like a broad strokes of what stage combat is in general and how to put those little pieces together. I'm gonna place my sword here, you're gonna catch it. If you had a fight choreographer or a fight director come into your school or come into a play that you're a part of, you'll know what to expect at that point. And you'll have more tools in your toolkit to be able to explore further. So I think that's one of the benefits of this, and it's also like a little spark. As we're coming down and flicking, we get a little sound. When I had my first stage combat class, I think it was at a one-acts festival in high school, and I loved it. And it was very much just like learning these little bits of things, and that kind of sparked that joy in me for when I got to do more training as I got older and got more invested in the arts. It was, I still remember that one stage combat class that I got to like fall on the floor and smash my head into a table. And then I was like, oh, this is so cool, but I was totally fine. So it's those moments of being able to like explore extremes and be able to like find joy in them, I think is what people can take away from it.
The Grammy Awards rocked Las Vegas last night, and there was plenty of Canadian talent there, too. Silk Sonic, the Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak duo, picked up awards for Best R&B Performance and Best R&B Song. Singer Olivia Rodrigo won Best New Artist, Best Pop Solo Performance, and Best Pop Album for Sour. And Jon Batiste won 5 Grammys on Sunday, including Album of the Year. Canadian Joni Mitchell also picked up a Grammy for Best Historical Album. And a very exciting win for BC last night. The Grammy for Best Latin Pop Album went to Alex Cuba, who lives in Smithers, BC. The Cuban-Canadian artist now joins us. Alex, first of all, congratulations. I have to ask you, where were you when you found out you won?
Thank you, Dan. Well, it was a pretty surreal experience I had. I was driving back home from 2 shows that I did in the Okanagan, in Kelowna and Vernon with the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra. And I was just approaching Quesnel, and when we entered into this massive snowstorm, you know, it was all the time we're back to winter, you know. Oh my God. I watched the time, I looked at the clock, and I thought to myself, I think my category already passed, so I'm pretty sure I didn't win anything, you know. But hey, a nomination is good. 5 minutes later, still driving in the snow, my publicist calls me, and I had my phone connected to the Bluetooth in the car, so it made a huge noise because we were playing some music, and so the phone call the ring was like super loud, and we jumped, and I didn't recognize the number. I answered it anyway, and my publicist said, "Oh, did you recognize my number? You know why I'm calling you, no?" And I'm like, "What? I said, "Oh, you don't know?" "No, I don't know." I said, "You won!" And he started screaming, and we started screaming too. You know, "You won!" And I am proud of myself today because I kept that wheel straight. I kept the car on the road, you know.
And all of this, and you mentioned you were coming back from 2 live shows with the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the album, but tell us what it's like to be back in front of a crowd like that.
I was so excited to see so many people together, you know, and enjoying and ready to take it in. And yeah, sure enough, amazing shows. We had a blast together.
And this new album, you recorded this at your home in the middle of this pandemic. What was that process like in a very difficult time for a lot of people to be able to hunker down and produce something that people are enjoying so much now?
Well, I've been saying at the shows too that not everything has been bad about the pandemic, you know. And it's kind of, you know, it makes people go, "Wow, what are you talking about?" But in my case, it made me focus on engineering, you know. This is the first time that I record myself, my music. And it gave me such an incredible, you know, interest, you know, to look at music that way. And it kept me inspired. It kept me busy throughout the pandemic. It kept me in good company. I like to maybe scale down a little bit on touring and share my time between producing music and touring, right? But it was just an amazing experience and I felt lucky all the way through to know, you know, because music kept me inspired, kept me creative throughout the pandemic. You know.
Alex Cuba, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the album. We're glad you're safe after winning a Grammy.
Yeah, me too. And after driving through a snowstorm. Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
A team effort, you might say, for one family in Comox who rescued an otter stuck at the bottom of a swimming pool.
Yeah!
There you go. The critter snuck through the fence with a big fish in its mouth and flopped into the pool, but it wasn't full. As he was chomping away, he realized he couldn't climb out. Enter some human helpers. The family first tried a pool scoop, then a hose, but it couldn't claw its way up. Then Teo Truax headed out to look for something the creature was more comfortable climbing.
And then I realized that the otter would be very comfortable climbing a log, so I walked down to the beach and grabbed a log, and then it was pretty happy.
After the otter ran away, the humans also fished out his fish and left it on the beach in case he wants to finish the meal, but Eagle took care of that. And finally tonight, we want to congratulate two of our own tonight, including Anita Bath, who's usually in this chair at this time. She took home tonight the Canadian Screen Award for Best Local News Anchor.
And the Canadian Screen Award goes to Anita Bath, CBC Vancouver News at 6.
Anita took over the show in May of last year and has led our coverage on stories like the pandemic, Lytton wildfires, and also hosted live from the Fraser Valley during the historic floods last fall. And CBC Vancouver's Belle Puri was also honored
And the Canadian
tonight,
Screen Award
taking
goes
home the
to
award for Best Local Reporter for her view of the front lines of the COVID fight at Royal Columbian Hospital. Well done, Belle. Well done, Anita. We are so blessed to have you. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight. A reminder, you can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and the website, cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is at 11 o'clock tonight with Zar Premji, right after the National. Thanks for joining us.